Oh my god. 2006, Sonic the Hedgehog came out to absolutely detrimental reviews, being labeled as not just the worst Sonic game of all time, but possibly the worst video game of all time. For a franchise that is as big as Sonic, to have a game being labeled as that, as part of your franchise, that is basically a death sentence. So, Sonic Team wasted no time to make the next Sonic game to try and rebound from Sonic 06. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking about that game, Sonic Unleashed, and its development. We'll be taking an insight into the development of the game, what changed, what's different, and any ideas that the devs might have had when making it. So, I guess we don't need to beat around the bush. Let's get right into it, starting with... So we already talked a bit, voice crack, hello? So we already, again? What the fuck? So we already talked a bit about it. Sonic Team was coming off the heels of Sonic 06, so they really didn't have any breathing room. They needed to get to work on the next Sonic game as quickly as possible to try and rebound and not only get some goodwill back, but completely forget about Sonic 06. The director and lead game designer of Unleashed even said himself that the whole development team is aiming to make Sonic Unleashed the best Sonic game ever, and that includes the Genesis era titles. We hope that even people who haven't played Sonic games feel like, wow, Sonic is back. And originally, they even planned for this game to be the third installment of the Adventure series. You know how we always talk about the Adventure series being the big red button last resort for Sonic? Well, they almost pressed it here, but eventually they stepped back from that, wanting this game to have its own identity. But we could still see some adventurisms in this game, like the hub worlds and levels having side acts similar to Adventure 2. But a new era also meant that Sonic also needed a new look. The art director, Sachiko Kawamura, wanted to ditch the lanky 06 model and try to find a middle ground between the modern and classic Sonic, and that's how she came up with the modern Sonic model that we all know and love and hate. Mostly hate. She also added the change of having Sonic's mouth to be on the side of his muzzle so that he is more accurate to the 2D art where Sonic's mouth is always to his side. And when it came to the levels and how they wanted to look, she wanted them to be based off of real world locations while still trying to have a hint of that Sonic surrealism at play. So that is how the world-trotting adventure was born, and the final decision was to make Sonic the only playable character so that they can really focus on refining Sonic's gameplay, which they decided to change to the boost formula, first used in the Rush games. But they also wanted a secondary playstyle to try and appeal to people who aren't familiar with Sonic. And that's where they came up with the idea of the Werehog, a more slowed down beat-em-up combat system during the popularity of God of War and DMC. What's funny is that even Sonic Team knew that this would probably be a controversial move, but they saw it as necessary, so they stuck with their guns. So they would have the playstyle of the speed stages where you would play as Sonic game in the more traditional way, and then you would have the combat stages where you would take a more slower platforming and heavy emphasis approach on combat. And with this game, they wanted to look as great as possible, so they started development on a new visual engine for Sonic the Hedgehog, the Hedgehog Engine 1, and that's where we get all these beautiful looking vibrant environments for the game, and it's also the start of a lot of misinformation. Let's make this abundantly clear. The Hedgehog Engine is a visual engine. The controls and physics are built on something else. This is only used for the lighting, the graphics, and all of that good junk. Now, I'm not gonna go into crazy detail in this video, but if you do want some crazy detail, there's a really good video by this other Sonic tuber named CFX where he goes in depth of how the Hedgehog engine fully works. So if you want to check that out, I'll link it in the description. Now that the blueprint was set for the game, production was underway. Now we get to talk about the fun stuff. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Starting with in Sonic Unleashed, there were two major characters that they needed to make, and we can see a few rough drafts of them right here, starting with Chip. Originally, Chip was gonna lean way more into being a spirit character, with him looking like a ghost, almost like Casper the Ghost in these concept arts. One of them was just him as a blob. We have him looking like Wigglytuff, one of him looking like a fish, one as Jet the Hawk's unwanted son, and one that's a bit closer to the design that we have, but him looking more like a dragon with large bat wings on his back. Eventually, they did start to narrow down his design for him, with him wanting to stick to that dog chihuahua look with little wings, almost like a pixie, and eventually they finally landed on the chip design that we know from the games. And the second big character that they had to design was the Sonic's werehog form. One of the earliest designs they had for him was him in the appearance of this Yeti looking monster, but they eventually decided to scale back, have him look like Sonic. Next we have Sonic taking on a more unique look, having a flame motif around his body, almost resembling an ancient spirit, maybe to coincide with Chips being an ancient spirit as well. We have another one with Sonic in kind of like this dreaded hairstyle, and we actually get to see the first instance of Sonic having stretchy limbs. Then the last two we have here is one of Sonic being betrayed and trapped in the time chamber for 1,000 years, and Sonic as a zebra. Honestly, if I were to choose my favorite, it would probably be the flame one. It just looks really cool without compromising too much. Up next we have concept art for practically every human character in the game, and as far as concept goes, it's practically one-to-one with the games. And I know this probably isn't a hot take, but these characters look way better in the 2D version of these arts, at least to me. I feel like these just feel way more expressive as 2D art rather than 3D, but I also think it's because the 3D models just kind of look weird. Up next we have all of the egg robots, and similar to the humans, most if not all of the Eggman enemies look one-to-one with the concept art. It's when we get to the Gaia enemies when things get interesting. Again, most of these look exactly how they do in the final game, but the ones that went through the most change were the mini boss enemies. The Big Mama enemy originally looked way more like a frog kind of, with the padded arms and the puffed up chest, but in the final game it takes on more a similar look to a lot of the Gaia enemies with a more rounded belly. And the Titan enemy, they just made him bigger and more menacing until they made him into a form we know today, almost looking like a smaller version of Dark Gaia. Speaking of Dark Gaia, it's probably the thing that looks the most different out of all of the enemies, originally only having 2 eyes, and it seemed that would be a bit more spirit-like, having different elemental forms with a ghost tail, and it even had a beard, and its limbs were way shorter and stubbier. Then eventually they came to the final version we know of, being one of, if not the most terrifying final boss designs in Sonic history. When it comes to character concept art, a lot of these are practically one-to-one with their final designs in the game, minus obviously Chip and the Werehog. But I think where stuff really gets interesting is when we talk about...
Here we go!
As you all know, concept arts of levels is my favorite thing to talk about, so I'm very excited about this. And the concept levels for Unleashed were being based off of real life locations, and that's such a cool idea, and I think the game does a really good job at representing all of the areas that they're inspired from. And since we're on that, my good friend Neomouse actually made a really great video talking about Sonic Unleashed levels and their real world counterparts. He's really into history and geography, and I researched part of his video for this video, so if you want to watch it, I'll link it in the description. So, without further ado, let's start off with Apotos, being inspired by the islands of Mykonos, and you can even find it in the files, which we'll get to later. And you can see in this art, they really wanted to nail that look for the game, having buildings being separated by different islands, and having that iconic white and blue hints all around the city. I even love that they did concepts for the ruins outside of the city. Up next is Missouri, which is based on Mali in Africa. We have Sonic taking a look at the shop, we have an art of the hut where you can find the hub world, and one of the architecture that can be found in the main level of the game, which actually look really cool, and you can see the design variations of them looking spot on to the final game. Up next we have the level with the most concept out of them, Spagonia and Rooftop Run. The concept art shows off ideas that we would see in the hub world. We see different alleyways at different points of the day, the entrance to the level in the day and the night, and we even get this overhead shot of the whole town where you can see Spagonia University, and it's almost a perfect one-to-one with the game, minus a few differences here and there. And of course we have a night variant, and can I just say, I love the art style of these concept arts. They feel like old paintings, and I feel like it fits the vibe of that game perfectly. Then we get to see some Rooftop Run art. While it is less, it is still interesting. First we have this one of Sonic standing in an alleyway with the stairs going up. Then we have one of a bridge. Now this one's a bit weird because I thought it was one piece, but it's actually 2 split up, with one having an arch over the bridge, with the other having the arch break off, and then, just having the sky. Then finally we have one of the buildings on the side, and these look the most different from the original game, having a way more rustic and older look to them compared to the cleaner look of the final game. Now we move move on to Chengnan, based on China. The first concept art is probably the most different of the bunch. It looks like the hub was gonna be way more like a city or large town rather than a small village in the mountains. Speaking of, we actually get to see the concept art of the hub world, and it basically looks one-to-one, but the hub here has a much darker tone to it, and the waterfall casts a large shadow over the town. And we also have a nighttime variant, obviously. We then get to see this bridge over a waterfall. Then we get one shot of the Great Wall of China section from Dragon Road, with what looks like a temple at the end of it. And finally, we get to see one of the Gaia temples rising from the ground. Up next, we see arid sands, and interestingly, we don't get to see much of the hub. It's mostly just arid sands in the desert area. We do have some of the pillars and the arches that will appear in the city, and a bit of the bazaar at night, but that's it. But we then get to see this large mountain with a crack in it, with some pillars on the entrance of the crack. We then also get the shot of the end of Arid Sands Day with the inside of the canyon. Unfortunately, there is only one piece of concept art of Skyscraper Scamper, and as a frequent visitor of New York City, they kind of deserve it. But I will say that this concept art looks really good, and it does look a bit foggier than the final game, but it still looks really cool and really claustrophobic, more than the final game at least. We have Adabat next, having very few pieces of art as well, with the only one of the actual hub being this large hut, and then we just have two of the Gaia temple hanging off of a cliff with Sonic running towards it. Then we have Eggman Land, which looks like hell. Literally, it leans way more into that red tone and is way more menacing than the final game. Now you may be wondering, wait a minute, where's Cool Edge? Well, don't worry, because we actually have more concept art by Studio Aoki, and they made some pretty cool concept art, and this one includes the Cool Edge one, which was missing from the rest that we have seen. In the concept arts, Cool Edge seemed to have a way more jagged look than the final game, with a bunch of sharp glaciers, and it seemed that there have been a lot more areas where it was just frozen tundra rather than just over water and glaciers in the final game. We also have some art of the water section of the level, obviously, and we have a new take on the ice caves. Unlike the original game where Sonic would just be dodging falling icicles and pits, Sonic would be like grinding on ice rails, and it looked really sick. And we also get two shots of the hub world in Holoska. And we also get some more concept art of Jungle Joyride, and it seems like they had a more swampy and jungly look to the level rather than the tropical vibe that the game ended up going for. To wrap this all up, we have concept art of the Sonic Unleashed opening. All of these shots are really cool, but some of my favorites are the ones like a bunch of floating pieces of earth around this flame, the shot of the cannon hitting earth, and this insane shot of Dark Gaia rising from the earth. And the fact that this is hand drawn is not fathomable. Like, this is insane. Again, I've said this probably the whole episode, but it's surprising how close the concept arts match the final game. While some things do look different to the final game, a lot of it does match. Now we get to what is probably the coolest part of this video.
Here we go!
In 2016, a user by the name of Ninja dumped the Sonic Unleashed preview build, which has unused level layouts and objects, unused or scrapped visuals and effects, and so much more. So we're gonna cover them here. But before we do, I have something even earlier of Sonic Unleashed that I want to take a look at. Starting with the leaked trailer of the game, which showed off a early version of Savannah Citadel Day, but it looks completely different from the final game. But we're going to be talking about that in greater detail later, so bear with me. We have another trailer, the actual trailer, that shows off a bit more of a complete version of Savannah Citadel, still looking hella less detailed, with the background elements not even being finished or missing entirely. Like, there are no buildings in that city or trees in the forest, and you just have completely empty blank plains in the back. Something else I noticed is that the lighting is completely different from the final game. It's clearly unfinished, like Sonic is lit in areas where he shouldn't be. Another difference that is immediately apparent is that Sonic's boost looks different. Instead of him, having that blue burst, it's more like air flowing around Sonic, and the model of Sonic himself is also a bit different. It's subtle, but it's enough to make a difference. One of the things that stands out to me are the eyes. I'm not sure if it's, the eyes themselves that are bigger or the pupils, but they look bigger than the final game. His mouth is also not part of the muzzle itself, but it's a texture, and the model is also just lower poly than the final game. Now we also get to see Apotos Day, and this is probably the level that looks the most different from the final game. We see the intro of the level, but the building density is much less in the final game, and it actually looks like it's over a cliff. Also, the canopy that's over the first little stairway is gone, but the rail is still there. Something else that's missing is that the other section with the ramp that takes you to the balcony is gone, and that means no top rail. This whole intro is pretty different from the final game. Now we do see bits and pieces of the rest of the level, but besides a few camera angles, it is kind of the same. But we do see this bit where Sonic goes to the first 2D section twice, and it seems like the building density here is a bit lower. Now, there is one more thing I want to look at really quick, the E3 build. Now, this is more similar to the final build of the game, besides a few things, like enemy placements in the levels, and the types of enemies in the levels, but the biggest change here that won't be in the beta build is the HUD. Specifically for Day Sonic. The HUD here uses a much darker tone for it and is not as transparent as the final, and the font use is also different, and it seems that the HUD was like this for a while because we could also see it in early promotional screenshots. Now that we got all of that out of the way, we can actually talk about the demo. So this demo starts with the typical Sonic Unleashed title screen that you might expect, but there are a few differences, like the start sound is the same one from Sonic 06. There are also only 3 options at the start: start game, options, and install. And install is going to be the most important one we're going to use because that's how we're going to get all the cool shit. Now we could just play the game normally, the intro cutscene plays and everything, and we even get a lot of the cutscenes here, but they seem to be missing a lot of sound effects.
Looks good, don't it?
And they're kind of bugged. Like if you skip them, the last audio clip that played will continue playing when you load into the level. Now, as far as levels, you can play the main day stages for Apotos, Missouri, Spagonia, Chenin, and Poloska, and the amount for the Werehog, with the most similar levels being Apotos, Chenin, and Spagonia. There are even some of the side acts that are playable somewhat. Now, I will try my best to use as much footage as possible because this build is extremely volatile and would crash when I try to open most things, most notably the latter half of the levels, Shamar, Empire City, Adabat, and Eggman Land, because those are not loaded on this disc. They're on a separate disc, which unfortunately is lost. Now again, levels like Windmill Isle, Rooftop Run, which is actually named Orange Roofs in this demo, and Dragon Road are mostly the same, minus some enemy placements and camera angles. For example, in Dragon Road, the egg rocket that's at this little spinning point after the dragon is now an egg pond with a shield spring, and the grind rail camera before the water run section is right behind Sonic rather than on the bottom left of him. Speaking of Sonic, he controls weird in this game, man. Daytime Sonic is mostly the same, but it's clear that it isn't fully refined yet, and one of the things that you'll notice if you play the game is that levels that require the drift, there isn't one. Even though Sonic has all of his abilities like the stomp, the air dash, the lightspeed dash, Sonic cannot drift. Even though they mentioned it in the E3 panel, he cannot drift, except for one instance in Missouri Day. I drifted for 1 second, and I don't know what caused it, but I was not able to activate it again. And thank God I was recording because y'all wouldn't believe me. But I don't know, maybe it was like a box trigger I activated, but I was never able to activate it again. And it's weird because this build is from September 1st, 2008, 2 months before the game released. Maybe that's why it sucks. Something else to point out is that this build runs at a uncapped 60 FPS, similar to the PS3 version, so it makes the game run higher, but it runs more unstable. And Sonic's jump ball is also different. Rather than being a glowing ball, it's Sonic jumping with blue lines around him. And for some reason, when Sonic hits a balloon, instead of doing a little spin, he does his light speed dash animation. One more thing is that the homing attack reticle is also different as well. Now for the nighttime, the Werehog is a whole other basket. First off, he has a weird running start where he starts walking and then starts his normal speed, and overall his controls are way more clunkier, swinging isn't as fluid, and there even is a longer delay when you finish a combo in this game. And a lot of the level's enemies are different as well, from smaller things like the little gremlin dudes being purple rather than green or red, to the wizard showing up when he shouldn't even be in this level. Missouri Knight has a severe lack of enemy variety, like the flower enemy not being at the start, and the levels itself is not even possible to beat. And this goes for a lot of the night stages. They seem to be widely incomplete. Like in Spagonia Night, the gold ring is at the beginning of the level, and for most of these levels there are no enemies, and most of the puzzles seem to not be implemented yet. The Werehog's combat itself seems pretty different as well. The combos feel like they have different inputs from the final. Also, the requirements to perform a finishing attack on enemies seems non-existent. Also, the icons on their head is now a fist. And probably the most noticeable change is the HUD. The Werehog uses a much more simplified HUD, not showing anything besides the health and the shield, and there is even an unleashed meter. Now for some cool stuff. This is where the install menu comes in handy. If you go to the install menu and find the old menu, you will see the menu that was used in the E3 demo to select different stages. This one looks really fucking cool. It almost looks like an early version of the Miles Electric. There are also these early loading screens that teach you the controls of each character, and there's actually 2 variants of these with different renders of the characters. Sonic also has a sun and moon medal counter in the levels, but he cannot collect any of them in the levels despite them appearing in the game. The world HUD also seems a bit different. The worlds have some disc icon next to them, and some of the worlds don't have final images yet, and the text looks really weird, like Apotos having an image that just says Mykonos, confirming the inspiration of the level. Speaking of, we can actually see what every world is based off of in the debug menu. We have Mykonos as Greece, the EU as Spagonia, Snow as Holoska, which I'm guessing is probably Alaska, China as Chenan, Petra, the city in Jordan, as Shamar, New York for Empire City, and Beach, even though in the files this is Indonesia, for Adabat. And Eggman Land is just Eggman Land. Overall, this demo is really interesting. While it is missing half of the levels since the rest are on another disc like we talked about before, it is interesting to see how much has changed in such a short time. Now finally, we get to talk about the cut and unused content of Sonic Unleashed.
Here we go!
Going back to the beta build for a moment, I know we were just there, but give me a second, it's interesting. We talked about this before, but there was actually an unused version of Savannah Citadel Day that is basically a completely different stage. Now, I have no idea how to access this, but N69 Videos was able to get it working, and it's almost a completely different level, with the only thing resembling the final level being the first 2D section. The intro is completely different, being a wide open area with no drifting really required. The second 3D section is much more open with a bigger emphasis on wall running. The second 2D section is also way more different, being more platform heavy, and the final tree climb is also different, not looping around like the final. Now, while they weren't able to get the textures working, there are some really early trailers that show off this level with the textures and how they would look in the game, and that's what the leaked trailer showed. I guess that's why it was leaked, because it showed an unused version of Missouri Day. Next up, we have some animations. Daytime Sonic has 2. One of him climbing, which he never does in the final game, possibly hinting to a cut ladder being in the game, and an alternative boost where he throws his hands back. For the Werehog, he has a lot. We have him opening a door from the inside out, and a bunch of him doing this animation that looks like he's holding something, but their uses are unknown. The next is an unused combo called the Aerial Pile Diver, but when he actually fails to do it in the air. And then there are 2 miscellaneous ones of Sonic giving you something and him celebrating. We then have 2 very early versions of Sonic transforming into the Werehog with the little time thing, and these are very clearly unfinished because they're not even rendered, and Sonic has this unused little dance animation that he does that doesn't appear in the final game. And finally, Super Sonic has a bunch of unused animations of him moving in all directions. And fun fact, the up animation is actually used in the trophy of the final game. Up next, we have some pretty interesting unused objects, like this DLC world gate that would be found in the hubs, and they would have this arrow icon inside of them. Another is this spider web that would be found in Adabat Night, and you could hit it, it has like some bouncy physics. And a bomb that would also be found, probably to blow up the spider web if my my best guess. Shamar Knight notoriously has a completely massive unused part of the level that is blocked off in the final game, but in one of the DLC levels it is fully playable, so I guess it is not fully unused. There was originally going to be a computer found in Professor Pickle's lab, and this laptop was part of a scrapped replay viewer where the player was able to, record their levels and their gameplay and then watch it back. But unfortunately, this was cut, and it's actually so unfortunate because this would have been really cool. The one last thing to end it off, we have some screenshots of an early version of the intro cutscene from Sonic Unleashed, starting with this iconic face right here that was actually an early version of the cutscene. The part where the egg bombs come up have a much darker lighting to it. This shot of the egg dragoon is also much darker, and we can actually see the full shot since it's not cut off by the borders. In this one, we can see a close-up of the egg dragoon and its hand, and it has significantly less detail than the final, losing a lot of the scratch marks on it. This supersonic shot looks different as well. The lighting on Sonic looks much brighter around the edges, and the aura looks much less flame-like. And this shot is probably the most different. Sonic looks so out of place here. His fur is missing that shine from the final, and it almost looks like it's not rendered properly. Same goes for this next shot. And in this shot, Sonic doesn't have electricity surrounding him. And with that, those are all of the interesting unused things from Sonic Unleashed. I think besides Sonic Adventure 2, this is one of those Sonic games that basically everything they wanted to do, they were able to do with this game. And it is kind of a shame that this game didn't get the recognition that it deserves. I'm not gonna say it's a bad game, but it's like, you know what you were doing. They took a risk, and it didn't pay off when they needed to. I mean, it's good now, people like it now, but they kind of didn't need it to be good now. They needed to be good then. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say for today. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, turn on notifications, comment down below. Do you guys enjoy the content? Something that I missed that I didn't mention in this video you want to bring up? Because I know there's a fuck ton of shit I didn't mention, because I've brought up everything. We'd be here for a fucking hour, and I don't want to, this is not the point of these videos. These videos are just the most interesting stuff. So okay, I will bring up, since we're at the end, I know there's like a cannon that was in the game, but I didn't want to bring it up here because I couldn't fucking find it. But yeah, I know that's here. But yeah, that's really all I'm going to say for today. Yeah, and I'll see y'all in the next one.